It's time for the good boy to call it a day. He really could do with a rest. Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, back in 2018, I started a trend of having April Fool what ifs come out on, obviously, April the 1st. These stories can be a little bit more fancy-free and less grounded within the world of Dragon Ball, where we can take liberties with certain story beats and be a little less grounded with our approaches in order to make something more entertaining and wacky, albeit more unlikely to actually occur in Dragon Ball. But with that freedom to do what we want essentially, I decided for our first What If outing to make Broly into something more than he was when we started in 2018, an utter meathead. But then along came Broly a few months later. But what that clearly showed though was that there was indeed a call and wanting of improving the character and see what he could actually do when given the chance to be good, or at least have half a brain and be coherent, or at least recover from all of the turmoil growing up. Mind you, there is tons of that to either be fixed or maybe not. It might come back to the fore and boil over into something pretty terrifying, but we do need to remind ourselves one last time, how might things turn out if Broly was given the chance to become good? The first Broly, because we know the second one, he's just such a sweet patootie. Well, as we've shown you the past few years, Broly's journey to redemption was a very precarious one. It did start off well with a case of amnesia, like Goku had in the series to begin with when he was a kid, and in turn it led to him relaxing and making the most of his latent power with new friends. However, as we have seen many times in the series, especially after part 5, his movie 8 and 10 escapades were lurking below the surface, and if certain information came to the fore, sparked something within him, stirring something within the character, it could definitely lead to something pretty grave erupting, and there were plenty of occasions where that did indeed happen. Part 7 with Trunks, oh boy! Yeah, big hulking Trunks there. Granted, when he was okay, even in the original, Broly could be rather docile and loyal to his friends and allies, but when it did become clear that he had been living with the very source of his pain back in the day, when he was a kid, Kakarot, it all went nuts. In the last part, Broly's amnesia had been reduced to a shell of its former self. He had found out the truth, that Kakarot, the person he had looked up to since getting to Earth, had been the cause of all of his pain prior to their encounter. It had all come about when fused with Goku to form Broly. It had been able to do the deed of beating Zamasu, but at what cost? Those two minds meshing with each other, Broly found out a lot of stuff. Now wanting to get some peace away from all of this strife, Broly fled Earth and sought solitude to fester and to stay away from Kakarot. He had just about enough resolve to not get Earth involved in his ire, but it was clear he was not coming back. However, Vegeta felt personal responsibility to at least try to convince Broly to come home with him and continue his training, perhaps maybe finding a way to cure his pupil of his misery, seek a new relationship with Goku, some sort of middle ground, be civil at least. We find ourselves now on Yardrat, our heroes needing to figure out what to do with Broly going forward, as he has shown immense struggles dealing with all of the new revelations and his power increases. They could not keep him going much longer. But first, Pibara needed to see what he would be working with. Let's wrap things up, shall we? Pibara and Broly's eyes met. The white and empty pools laying down on the mat were filled with rage, despite being devoid of character. It was clear that Broly, even with his energy and ki at a relatively low level, he was still recovering from all of the output that he exerted earlier. He was still quite dangerous though to anyone on Yardrat who wasn't Goku or Vegeta. However, Pibara didn't flinch, despite the Saiyans bracing themselves.
Pibara, get back! Broly's out of control!
Vegeta shouted. It pained him to say that though, saying that not only his pupil of many years now had lost his cool, but also that he had failed at his own personal mission to better him. After all this time, it seemed like it was all for naught. He'd done nothing to improve Broly's condition. It sickened him to utter those words, even to himself. No need to worry, my friends. This shall not lead to harm. Pibara raised his hands over Broly, and the Saiyan's face eased and his eyes closed, sending the Hulk back into a deep sleep. Wow, if only we knew that earlier. Things would have been way easier.
You're one to talk, Kakarot! If you hadn't barged in when you did, I might have succeeded at calming him down. Then we wouldn't need to be here.
Gentlemen, please, calm down. Do you need a nap like our friend here? He motioned to Broly, and this was enough to stop the two bickering. So, tell me, Goku, what seems exactly to be the problem? Is this a case of insomnia for your compatriot?
No, mister. It's a lot more complicated than that. Have you got the time?
Pibara nodded. I always have time for you, friend. To explain. And with that, Goku explained the whole widget, the saga of Broly, to his former master. He told him everything. The events with Paragus and the comet at the beginning, the arrival on Earth entombed in ice, losing his memory, the struggles with God Ki, and then up to the revelation of his amnesia slipping away, and revealing the truth of Kakarot and his reason for seeking him out all this time. It wasn't admiration, something Broly thought for so long. It was revenge. Pibara took everything in, without flinching or seeming disinterested. I see. This is indeed a very somber affair. So, do you seek guidance from myself? They both nod.
Is there anything you can do to fix his memory or make him better?
If you're asking me to wipe his mind of your influence, Vegeta, then that would be immoral.
Huh? Immoral? Why?
Look where that has gotten you all today. Wiping memories. Granted, he would never remember the truth about you, but really, could you live with yourselves knowing that he had been tampered with in some way to make him what he will become afterwards? He would be physically healthy, yes, but his soul would ultimately be clipped. What makes him him would be compromised from its full potential. It might even curtail his power. And that might not be prudent given how everything seems to be getting more and more chock-full with power these days.
Right.
Goku looked a little put out, but he understood ultimately.
Well, what can we do then? If we can't erase his memory, then how can we stop him from lashing out again?
Said a rather concerned but annoyed Vegeta. There is plenty we can do. I can take him under my wing and assist him in balancing out his mind without the need of amnesia. It did work up to a point, but with my help, we can eliminate that worry of going rogue for good.
Does that mean you can focus his ki and stuff, Pibara? Like he did with me?
Said Goku with excitement in his voice.
Kakarot, please! This is not the time for you and your desire to fight strong people to show up! This is Broly's livelihood we're talking about!
Pibara looked serious, siding with Vegeta. Indeed, you're right, to a point. From what I can sense, his mind is so riddled with trauma, it would either take many years to fix entirely, or such intense training in such a short space of time. It could make things worse if it doesn't take. This shocks Goku and Vegeta. Even worse? How could it get even worse? This decision needs to be made by Broly and Broly alone. I understand that you both have his best interests at heart, but this one here also has a say in the matter. Before he wakes up, I do request one thing, that you depart Yardrat. This gets under Vegeta's skin.
What? Leave him here? Are you crazy? We've had to deal with his outburst firsthand, and barely came out of it with our lives!
Oh, Vegeta, I thought you had every faith in your pupil. Is that no longer the case, after seeing his true self?
Pibara was right. He just questioned Broly's fortitude, despite backing him up just a few seconds ago.
He remained quiet, but Pibara understood the impact of this revelation. I promise you, I will take care of him. Now please, for this to work to the fullest, I must ask you to leave. When Broly is ready, he will come and find you. Only then will he be rid of his demons forever. Goku and Vegeta looked to him, and then to the master. Goku pats Broly's shoulder.
Take care, Broly. I hope we meet again, in better circumstances.
Vegeta turns away and doesn't say anything.
Vegeta? Are you sure you don't want to go say goodbye?
Of course not! This is not the last time we shall meet. What is the point of saying goodbye now?
Goku looked stunned as Vegeta headed back to the ship. He turned back to his master, feeling worried. Don't worry, Goku. I can tell that he's worried. Let him calm down. Now go. We will be fine. The Saiyan nodded and followed the prince. When Broly came to, he looked around his surroundings. He wasn't angry, or out of control, or anything. He had calmed down to his base self. He spotted a Yardratian tending to his bedside. He thought he would have been shocked to see this strange thing, but he felt oddly
assured by its presence. The attendant then looked up and saw that Broly was conscious and smiled.
Oh, good! You're awake! I shall go tell Master the good news. Wait here.
Broly nodded cautiously and sat up in bed, thinking to himself, how did he get here? Pibara arrived a few minutes later and greeted Broly with a warm welcome. Glad to see you are awake, my friend. We have a lot to discuss. Tell me, how do you feel? I feel odd. Like my body's been through a lot that I can't explain. How long have I been asleep? Since you got here? About a week. A week? Wow. Whatever happened must have been intense. The master smiled. Good. The rest was sufficient enough to expunge the negative emotions as of late that had been building up. He was now at his most docile. For the time being. You are here, Broly, to learn something rather insightful. Your master Vegeta requested the training. Vegeta? Right. I don't remember him talking about this with me. Are you sure what you say is true? Positive. We Yardratians do not make up such things. Broly nodded to that statement. Well, okay. So what do we do? All in good time. For now, get to know the town. I shall have my assistant here escort you around. With that, Broly got to know the Yardratians very well, and they in turn became very good friends with him. He quite liked the calm nature of these people. It all felt rather tame and quaint. This was crucial in aiding his recovery, and over the months that followed, he and Pibara would focus on his basic training in fortifying his mind. Pibara did have to admit that this task was probably one of the most difficult that he had to undertake in a very long time. However, he was still open to the challenge, and soon enough, he was getting results. Broly's aura was getting far less muddled and much more pliable. Soon enough, the time came to discuss the K-word. Broly, how do you feel when I say the name Kakarot? Broly's arm tensed up, his teeth gritted slightly, and his aura started to boil, even though it wasn't visible. Pibara was a little nervous, but he dared not show it. Any sign of faltering now, and all of this training would be put back weeks, or at worst, he'd be back to square one. The rest of his assistants prepared to sedate Broly, but it wasn't necessary. Broly calmed down and sighed. Kakarot. That name brings me pain, but from a long time ago. Pibara smiled. Of course it would. You have been through a lot, my friend, in your time. It is okay to feel sad about certain things. There is no point suppressing such things. It'll only make it worse. Broly smiled. Thank you, Master. What does this mean? It means, Pibara said, that we can move on now to the real training. Real training? Oh yes. Now that you don't feel as worked up about Kakarot anymore, Broly's fist clenched slightly, but he remained focused, we can start to refine your energy to the point where all of your output is under your total control. Total control? You possess great power, Broly. If used to its fullest at all times, you could be the strongest force for good in the universe. Broly was blown away at this news. To hear he could be stronger than anyone in the universe if he put his mind to it. Maybe even more so than Beerus, perhaps. Well, this excited him. And so began Broly's proper training. The kind that Goku did back in the post-Namek saga. Now I bet you're wondering actually, well, what's happened to the Tournament of Power in all of this? Well, it still happened, but without Broly. It took a lot of quelling Beerus' temper, but they had to explain that including Broly in the team roster at this stage might not be beneficial, and in fact, it might lead to the team being disqualified, Goku being killed if he was provoked. Instant disqualification. With that in mind, Beerus grudgingly relented, and instead, they went with the same team as they did with the original series. Since their powers differed very little in comparison, we had basically the same outcome from the tournament as we did in the show. You know, Ultra Instinct Goku and all of that, so there's no need to retread old ground here, if you will. However, since this is an April Fool What If, we'll include a little Easter egg we don't usually do for What Ifs, or at least not yet. We shall throw a nod tomorrow here. So let's go. It's been about a year or so since Broly arrived on Yardrat, and his training had been going rather well. He was in the latter stages of his initial meditation training, and was more determined than ever. It had been a snowball effect. The more relaxed and focused he became, the further he wanted to push his boundaries and resolve, which then meant he would focus more and relax more. He had become a whole new person, and with the gift of patience on his side, as well as distance from Goku for a considerable amount of time, and from the battlefield, Broly had never felt better. It was put to the test when, out of the blue, Vegeta arrived on Yardrat. When he was up on the plinth, he turned his eye to the plinth next to him and saw his master right by him, regaled in the same uniform as he.
Master!
Vegeta turned to him and shushed him.
Shh! There's little time to explain, Broly. Soon, I shall tell you.
He turned away before turning back again.
It's good to see you, friend.
Broly smiled. Yes, you too. Vegeta resumed his own training and chuckled.
At last, some good news.
Broly finished his meditation at the same time as the prince, albeit Broly had a few months head start, obviously, and the two caught up, the latter realizing how much calmer Broly had become, and strong. This was of course put to the test when Moro's goons arrived, led by Yuzun, to capture Vegeta and Yardrat. However, with Broly here too, yeah, that was no contest. Yuzun and his men were off in seconds. Both the prince and his pupil were stunned at their brand new focused ki. Remarkable.
Broly, you pack as much of a punch as you did when you... Yeah.
When I got angry. Yeah, I do. But now, I can do it all the time.
I see. We could really use your help on Earth, Broly. There is a terrifying power terrorizing not only it, but the rest of the universe. Nowhere is safe.
Broly did contemplate this, but he shook his head. No, Master. I'm not ready. I've only just started my proper training like you. If I leave too soon, this might all be undone. I can't risk blowing up in front of Kakarot anymore.
You said his Saiyan name.
Yeah, I can do that now without getting mad. I remember everything from my youth, but it's all right. Where I am right now, it's a good place. Broly nodded and affirmed his stance. He wouldn't help. It's like I said, Vegeta. When Broly is fully ready, he will return. I promise, Vegeta, I will. Vegeta scowled but understood. Soon enough, Vegeta transmitted out of there and went on to do his bit in stopping Moro's rampage. Years passed. The 25th Tenkaichi Budokai was approaching, and Goku and Vegeta were keen to test themselves in this time of peace. But they then saw somebody who honed into view when the two Saiyans had caught up themselves. A tall man, with shaggy hair and scars over his face and body, but the smile was warm, soft, and familiar. It was Broly. He looked at peace. He felt normal, and he was happy. And that's where we end things, with Broly finally all good. So what did you folks think? Do you feel this was an apt way to end Broly's struggle with his past? Are you happy that he is happy with his lot? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!